Welcome to our next edition of the Foundation Speaker Series. My name is Karen Musanti. Today I am being joined by a new friend, Mr. Ron Wagner. Ron is a marketing and communications executive, tested, proven, and certain. He's described as a business athlete with CEO qualities. He's restless, curious, engaging, passionate, and assertive. But in his heart, he's just a kid from Northeast Philadelphia who made good. I don't want to give up too much information early on, so let's just get started. Ron, welcome, and thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thrilled to be part of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So instead of me telling the audience all about your background, how about we get into it and you tell us a little bit of your story?
Happy to do so, and I'll do it quickly. I was a decidedly middle-class kid growing up in Philly. My parents worked 4 jobs to put me and my brothers and sisters through Catholic grade school and high school. Was the first in my family to go to college. Always wanted to go to Penn State. And as you can see behind me, I've got years of my Penn State experience on the walls. Opened my own doors with internships, which led to a great career with a global financial services company. Met a wonderful young lady while working there. We got married young, had kids young, sacrificed, saved, and I've been fortunate to build a life and career with great mentors and people who've guided me, and I'm really just living just a life I couldn't have dreamed growing up as a kid. And I'm a testament to what it's like to being resilient, purposeful, working hard, trying to do the right things, and seeing things turn out the right way.
Wow. I know you've had quite the journey. We've spoken a little bit about that. And I know from our conversations that you're someone who can honestly say that you actually worked in the field that you went to school for. Marketing and branding it's been your life. Both your career and your passion for helping people to understand what their brand is. So maybe could you talk a little bit about how you define a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, you're right. I am that rarity. I'm one of the small handful of people that have used their degree every day of their professional career. And as you said, branding. It's funny. You look at textbooks, Karen, and a lot of people make a lot of money selling textbooks for college. And there's these academic definitions of what a brand is. But there was a term that I heard, or definition I heard a few years ago, which has really stuck with me. And it said that a brand is what you tell your friends about afterwards. And that is so brilliant and simple. If you think about it, if you have a great experience with a product or service, you tell your friends about it afterwards. If it's bad, you tell them the bad. So well-built brands have great experiences and great tales passed on. And conversely, poorly built brands with poor experiences products have bad tales passed on. So I say a great definition of the brand is what you tell your friends about afterwards.
Wow. So why do brands are good brands? Why do they matter?
You know, it's you could probably look to your own experiences. I can certainly look to mine, but people will travel further. They will give up greater consideration. They will pay more to acquire a good brand. That's number one. Number two, well-built brands are able to weather storms and downturns and reputational issues. They've built up such goodwill that people are willing to give them a pass. Poorly built brands can often collapse under bad news or financial pressures. And I think more importantly, as it comes to marketing, the test of a good marketer isn't to spend as much money as possible, but it's to spend as little money to achieve goals. Well-built brands don't have to invest as greatly in marketing because they have advocates that are telling their tales for them. So that's why I think the power of really well-built brands matter.
Yeah, you mentioned your personal experiences. Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, there is. I'm a beer lover. I love a good beer, and there's a brewery in Comstock, Michigan, called Bell's Brewery, and they have a product called Hop Slam, and it comes out once a year, kind of mid-January, but it's rare on the East Coast where I live in suburban Philadelphia. So what I typically do is I'll travel to 8 to 10 beer distributors and we'll put my name at the top of the list. And then I'll get these phone calls when the beer arrives. So I'm always cobbling together about 3 to 4 cases from different sources in January. And I'm paying about $85 to $90 per case. And I don't even bat an eyelash. I'm thrilled to hand the money over because it's a product that's great with a brand and a brewery that I've known to produce great products. And to me, that's the perfect example of how people will pay more, travel further, extend more time and effort to be associated with a good brand.
Absolutely, that's a great example. Can you help our viewers then to see how that may relate to their lives?
Yeah, I tell that the Bell's Brewery and the Hop Slam product really as almost a nice segue or a transition into the importance of building a personal brand. If you think about it, we're all brands. We're not an employee. We're not an associate. We're not a team member. I mean, we may be, but we are a brand. And our brand has unique, intrinsic, relevant, different qualities. And if we maximize them, then we'll get people to travel further and pay more to acquire us as an employee. So to me, the Bells is a great example of if you build a brand personally as strong as a Bell's Hop Slam product, the end result is you're going to have people clamoring to travel, to find you, to pay you more. Shouldn't we all be like that?
Absolutely. Boy, that's tremendous. So how would somebody build a personal brand? How do you go about even starting that process?
Well, there's 3 steps that, and they're simple steps, but there's some complexity to it. But I think the first thing is, one, you have to view yourself as a brand. You know, I'm a sports guy, so you look at a Michael Jordan. There was a great ad campaign years ago saying, if I could be like Mike. So you have Michael Jordan, who's a great brand. You have LeBron James, who is building a brand. Closer to home, you have a Saquon Barkley, who's building a brand. Also closer to home, Sidney Crosby of the Pens. Great athletes, but they've transcended that. They've become brands that stand for something. So number one, view yourself as that brand. Secondly, there's something that I like to say that I call navel gazing. And that's kind of staring at your belly button. To really build a good brand, you kind of have to look inward and be introspective and ask yourself a series of tough questions the way a product marketer would before they launch a campaign. There's about 7, 8, 9 questions I typically challenge people to really answer to help them kind of uncover, discover, and embrace their brand. And I think the third thing, and this is probably the most important, you always have to commit to being a symbol of your best. If you've built a good brand, you don't partner with other companies that take away from your brand. You don't put yourself in situations that erode that. So you surround yourself with companies and people and in situations that do nothing but deliver and align with your brand, but also build that up and add greater value. And that's perfectly, I think, relevant as you relate to social media and the friends we choose and the choices we have on weekends. If I'm talking to young adults and young and up and coming professionals, always commit to being a symbol of your best.
Wow, that's great. So I'm sorry, I can't let it go without asking more about navel gazing, right? It's certainly a new term for me. So maybe can you talk a little bit more about that?
Navel gazing is, it's staring at your belly button. It's taking a look and saying, But there's an example that I share. When I was a little kid, growing up in the early 70s, there was this daredevil named Evel Knievel. And I loved watching Wide World of Sports because he would always be jumping his cycle over 20 buses, Caesar's Palace. But in 74, when I was about 7, 8 years old, he wanted to jump the Snake River Canyon in what he called a sky cycle, a little rocket ship. And there was this great coverage leading up to it all week. And I was kind of a naive kid. And I said to my dad, why does he need to jump that? There's a bridge right down the down the other end? Why don't you just use the bridge? And I say navel gazing because if I talk to young professionals, the instinct is they naturally want to jump to the other side and build resumes and start blindly posting for jobs. And I tell them, don't be like Evel Knievel. Take steps along the bridge, along the path to building your brand. And that starts with those questions that I referenced earlier that help you take that bridge to the other side to building your brand. That's the navel gazing. And as a product marketer, there are campaigns that I launch and brands I introduce where before I know that I have the basis for a campaign or a communications initiative, I have to answer these questions to validate that. And I always often pose those same questions to the young adults and young professionals I work with.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those questions then. What type of questions might there be?
Yeah, there's about 7 or 8 with some sub questions, but I think number one is, what is your product? What is your brand? And what does it do? What are its features and benefits? Challenge yourself. I'm a product. What are my product offerings? I think secondly, what makes that product relevant, different, and better? Relevant, different, and better. RDB is what I always say. And why does that matter? Everyone will say they're a team player and I work hard, but that's not relevant and different. Maybe relevant, but it's not different. So challenge yourself to say, what makes my product relevant, different, and better than others that are competing? And I think another question is, who's your target audience? You have to know who you're selling your brand to. Why are they buying? What are the problems they have to solve? Why are they looking to you to solve the problem? And how do you help solve that problem? And I think, and that's one of those questions there. It's hiring or adding someone isn't an act of charity. People always hire or look to bring people on as a student worker, as an intern, or as an employee because they have a problem to solve. So know what that problem is and position your brand to solve that problem. And I think following that, you got to provide proof. So the question I ask people to challenge themselves is, one, know your target audience, know the problems they have to solve, but show me the proof that your brand solves that problem better than someone else's. And then lastly, I always challenge with this last question, what's the single most important message that you need to communicate to your audience? And I say, make it arresting. What can you say about your brand? Single most important message that arrests them, that holds them there, that makes them want to learn and know more about your brand or product or service. Now we can go deeper into the questions, and I typically do, but it's not an easy exercise by any means, but it is a truly worthwhile exercise. The more that I start talking with young professionals and up and coming pros about this, kind of the light switches on, and they're like, I get it. No one's talked to me about viewing myself as a brand. They tell me, well, just build a resume. Well, how can you build a resume unless you know the story you want to tell about your brand? And these questions help get to that.
That's great. That's great. So, Ron, as we wrap up our time together, I wondered if you could just provide us with some final tips or easy lessons to remember.
I would say I'm not big on acronyms because the world is full of acronyms, but I always, when it comes to personal brand building, I always say RDB, RDB, RDB. What's your RDB? Your relevant, differentiated benefit. The more that we commit ourselves to saying what makes me relevant, different, and better, it is so much easier to market yourself with distinction. And if you think about the marketing yourself with distinction, picture a hiring manager going down a supermarket aisle. They're confronted with thousands of, well, maybe not thousands, a few hundred boxes of cereal. What makes one box of cereal pop from the store shelf versus another? What makes that hiring manager stop their cart and say, I'm picking that one? They grab the one that's packaged well, that has a clear promise, that has a single most important message to communicate that resonates with them. It all starts with understanding what makes you relevant, different, and better. And, if I could wrap up, I can say that it really is a journey. It's taken me a number of years, and not only introspection, but also kind of looking in the rearview mirror to really understand what makes me relevant, different, and better. So when I get that question asked of me, Ron, what's your RDB? I always tell them, I act fast, I talk straight, I solve problems, I do what's right, and I live up to my word, because I've got proof of doing those things. And I know in saying those things that very few people can make that bold statement. So that RDB, it's not easy to get to, but if you keep thinking RDB, you are well along the way to staying in tune with your personal brand.
Wow, that's incredible. Ron, thank you. Thank you so much for your time, for all the tips on helping us all of our viewers learn more about themselves and how important it is that they know how to best market themselves and create their brand. It's such an important topic, not only for our students, but also for adults who are looking to make a career change, or especially given the times that we're in, to really help themselves stand above and beyond everyone else. So thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Happy to do this, Karen. And I hope this is great for the audience.
Absolutely. If anybody wishes to talk with Ron individually or to connect with him through our offices, feel free to do so. His contact information will be provided following this interview. He would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.